Yes, a shout out to Ben Rankins. Yeah, you make a good point, Ben, on that comment you made on that one of my videos about, oh yeah, the Ramones' first album, about being able to hear records in real time. See, I was blessed, um, really, because I was born before rock and roll. I was born 6 years after World War II ended. King George VI was on the throne. Stalin was the dictator in Russia. Um, Truman, who dropped the bomb on Japan, was still the president. Um, Menzies, the prime minister that the country had for 16 years straight or something. I don't know. So there was no rock and roll. I actually remember hearing Rock Around the Clock, and actually the first real rock and roll type song I remember is Johnny Ray, Cry. Um, and it's sort of rock and roll, but no, but it was like if you could have heard Mystery Train by Elvis, if you could have heard Peggy Sue, the first record that blew my tiny little mind when I was about 7 years old, and it still blows my mind. The drums on Peggy Sue by Buddy Holly and the Crickets, Buddy Stratocaster, I think it's a Strat. The rhythm, it's great. Eddie Cochran, Summertime Blues, Having a Nervous Breakdown. It's just so many. There weren't a lot of great records to buy if you're a little kid, but there was just enough. And money just was so hard to come by. I worked washing windows and doing all sorts of things just to buy, 145 a fortnight if I was lucky. So you had to choose really well. Um, and in those days, there was so much good stuff, so much. And especially in the 60s, it really took off with the Beatles. That's, yes, I know the Beatles are overrated, but at the time, they were such an influence that then it became an even bigger problem to choose what records to buy because millions of bands formed after the Beatles got successful, and some of it was really good, and it just blew out of control in 63, 64, and it was impossible to buy everything. You just couldn't do it. A lot of records. That's why most of my 45s got stolen at the party because you had to work your ass off to get them, and that's if you. And there was nothing. There was no mega stores. There was no internet. There was no pop magazines that actually. It was like if there were pop magazines, they were just a column in the TV Week or TV Times, and it was just rubbish. Um, you didn't. You had to rely totally on the taste of your local disc jockeys because what was a hit in Sydney was hardly ever a hit in Melbourne, and vice versa. And the same with Brisbane and Adelaide, and to some extent Perth. Even Tasmania had one band or something. It you, it was wow. It was exciting because it was so important. And I watched this video recently, and I got sick of watching them. There were these three young blokes in America in their 30s or something, and they've been going through the best albums of each year since rock and roll started, the best singles, um, and then they are working off shit they've seen on YouTube or the internet without having any idea of the context of what these songs meant at the time they came out. Um, You can't imagine. We didn't get colour TV till 74. I had one of the first colour televisions in Australia in 1974. And I suddenly had 100 friends I didn't know I had crammed into my tiny fibro bedroom. Um, there was just so, you know, there was no FM radio until, the mid-70s with Double J in Sydney, and then it was Triple J later, and then Melbourne had Triple R. But, I mean, you basically the thing was radio. You had to have a transistor radio. I was I got chucked out of school when I was 15, 16, and but Dad said if I pass my school certificate, he'll buy me a transistor radio. And I managed to just bluff my way through those exams. I got a transistor radio, and that's what us kids, you know, you just couldn't afford to buy records unless they were really, 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 really special to you. And I have still got every single I've ever bought, except ones that have been stolen or misappropriated accidentally. I've got them all. I've got my first records. I'll never sell them, never, because they mean as much to me as a photograph album does to an average person. You know, they go, oh look at Johnny. He was so cute when he was young. How come he turned out like he did? I go and pick out Concrete and Clay by the Unit 4+2, and I Feel Fine by the Beatles. And it's like looking at a photo album because I remember the very day I went into Gurgenti's record bar in Gymea, my local shop, mum and pop record shop, and bought two singles with money I made stacking shelves in Woolworths. And I had to choose carefully, and I've got both of those singles still, and I still love them. And the first EP I bought was Bob Dylan, Highway 61, and then my first album was It's Too Easy by the Easy Beats, and Well Respected Kinks. The same day I bought, no, it wasn't the same day, but just after I bought my first two singles of my own hard-earned money, I bought those two albums. So I can always remember, you know, to me they're like photo albums. You know, I don't play them; they're there, and I just like to look at them. You know, I go, oh yeah, you know, it's just so. And these young guys in their 30s, they rank, you know, going, oh, let's rank every Billy Joel album, every Elton John album. You know, they always pick shit bloody artists to start with, and then they come across bands that really mean something, and they haven't got a clue. They just don't get it because they don't realise how unbelievably strange and wonderful the first King Crimson album was, or Jimi Hendrix's three official albums, or Beggar's Banquet, the Rolling Stones, or their Satanic Majesty's Request, the Rolling Stones, or the mono, only the mono, Sergeant Pepper. Highway 61 Revisited, Bob Dylan. I've still got my original copy, and it was worn down to the bone. I played that over and over and over and over. And it's like it was all in context. And then there would come the time where an artist you loved, you no longer loved. I got over Dylan the minute he put out the one after Nashville Skyline. And there's only 3 tracks on that I like. So, you know, my whole interest in Bob Dylan was, I mean, me and my mate were listening to Bob Dylan before the Beatles even came along. We were like 9 or 10 years old, and we were listening to Bob Dylan records. There was no Beatles. There weren't even any Stones. It's hard for you to understand, isn't it? It's hard for me. I can't shut up. It's just, yeah, it's so true. And these records that I bought, you had to choose well, and they were hard to come by. And the first import shops didn't hit Sydney until the late 60s. I had the Australian Led Zeppelin 2 with your favourite track of all time, After Toad by Ginger Baker on the Cream's first album. Your favourite album track of all time, Moby Dick. I had the Australian issue, and I wish I'd kept it because it was on the green and silver festival label in Australia, and unusually it was a gatefold, but it didn't have the Zeppelin in the middle. It had a black and green photo of the band, and it was a really cool fold out. But then one day I went into Martin's, one of the first import record shops in Sydney, and I got an American copy of Led Zeppelin 2, and I opened it and it had the Zeppelin in it. I went, oh, and it sounded much better than the Australian one. There's so much. And for these youngsters to give critiques just off stuff they've read or seen on YouTube, It's just not on. I can't bear watching them. I stopped because I just thought, you don't know what you're talking about. They're talking about, their parents' bloody record collections. If I had to talk about my parents' record collections, I'd be ranking the black and white minstrel show, Doris Day albums. Fuck. It's like something got seriously lost after the 80s, once CDs came in, and expensive. In America, albums and singles would cost peanuts. In Australia, they cost a bloody fortune, just like CDs did when they first came out. $30 for a CD. In America, they're $8. So and another thing is, not only did we have all the best US and UK stuff on the radio to buy, we had our own homegrown stuff, which was just as good. So many, as you know, we've got so many for a country of 6 to 12 million people, 12 million people in the 60s. The output from Australia's was massive. So, oh look, I'm hungry. I've got to eat. Um, so yeah, it's buying them in real time. I can never part with them. I just can't do it. It's like having a family pet put down, or 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 having your first love of your life leave you or something. It's anyway. Yeah, it's a great point, but yeah, yeah. Anyway, mate, it's great that you respond to my vids because we're Aussies, we sort of got that in common, and so anyway, have a good weekend.